We had long left Cheers and had created the series Wings, and that was in its third or fourth year when Cheers started winding down. And Kelsey came to us and said, would you be interested in doing a series for us? And we said, sure, you're one of the best actors around, period, as well as one of the funniest men we know.
During the 8th season, we made a deal that whatever happened when Cheers was over, I would do another show. And we didn't know what it was going to be. It was, of course, just a fledgling, entity at that point. And then as we got closer to somewhere in the middle of year 10 and we realized that 11 was really going to be it for Cheers, I spoke with the guys at Grub Street and said, I've got this commitment. You guys have a deal here. Let's work together.
So we got busy working on an idea for Kelsey Grammer that had nothing to do with what Frasier came to look like.
Originally, we were going to do a show about a guy who was a kind of a self-made mogul who'd had a motorcycle accident, who was going to be stuck in bed.
And the whole series was going to take place in this huge sort of Manhattan penthouse of his, and he was running his empire from his bed.
Most of the characters were going to revolve around him, stuck in bed, trying to, he's rebuilding his motorcycle in his living room, and he can drag himself around once in a while. And it was just a very different kind of show.
Another character in the show was going to be this Hispanic physical therapist woman who took care of him, and there was this sort of culture clash between them. And Paramount thought the idea was horrible, and they said, no, you're going to do Frasier. I think that would be a really good idea, to do Frasier.
But it turned out to be good advice, because what it gave us was a built-in recognition, an audience that, was missing Cheers, obviously, and was hoping that something interesting would happen with this guy.
Just the fact that he'd been on Cheers for 9 years was enough to make people watch it that first time, and that's all we needed.
From that point on, we made it a huge departure, of course, from Cheers. I mean, we wanted to make him, take him as far away as possible from Boston, and of course he ended up in Seattle, and with a whole family that had been dead before, frankly, or didn't exist. And we took some license and ended up with this nuclear family that has, remained intact for the last 10 years.
I remember distinctly going into the network to Warren Littlefield and saying, well, hold on to your hats, but we're actually going to pitch you a family comedy and not a workplace comedy for Frasier.
The greatest thing was that actually we made it a whole different show with just one thing that remained at least recognizable, was the name of Frasier. Even the character really kind of changed.
We laid it out pretty much the way you see it now on the air in about, 10 minutes? Mm-hmm. Even mentioning, I think, most of the cast members that we'd like to have. And they said, oh, go do that.
As most creators do, when you're saying to someone who doesn't know your vision of it, we would say, well, Frasier's got this rather crusty father who he hasn't gotten along with, and picture somebody like John Mahoney playing the father. And that's what we did. And they said, well, if you can get John Mahoney, he's pre-approved. You don't have to go through casting.
And he's got a brother that he competes with, and we're picturing somebody like David Hyde Pierce, and they went, oh, he's great. If you can get him, he's pre-approved.
No casting for Niles. And then we went along further, and we said there'll be this kind of, wacky housekeeper. We're not sure if she's Hispanic or if she's English. Hispanic, we're thinking somebody like Rosie Perez, and Warren Littlefield said, have you ever thought of Jane Leeves if she's English? And we said, well, we'd like Jane Leeves. And he said, hey, if you can get Jane Leeves, she's pre-approved and you don't have to cast. And the fact that we didn't have to go through that, didn't have to see dozens of actors and actresses, just made it a real easy process for
Although
us.
we did end up seeing, I think, over 300 actresses for Roz. So we sort of got a little bit of our own back.
And don't forget, we also saw 3 dogs and an orangutan for Eddie.
That's true.
Frasier Crane is a bumbling intellectual.
Oh, for Pete's sake!
He was an extremely likable character on Cheers.
Well, I'll go out on a limb and take that as a compliment.
His character on Cheers had been a sort of more extreme secondary character. But now that he was moving to the center to be the lead of the show, he needed to be a little bit more normal seeming.
When you're the centerpiece of a show, you have to be a little more grounded.
Frasier was starting over again in a new town. I mean, it was his hometown, but he was starting a whole new job, which was, you know, doing this radio talk show and doling out advice over the radio.
That idea had grown out of an idea that the three of us had had when we were on Cheers for just a single episode of Cheers where Frasier was going to sit in for a Boston radio psychologist for a week.
And so I felt like because I would know radio, he'd be kind of the fish out of water in our situation.
You dropped 2 commercials, you left a total of 28 seconds of dead air, you scrambled the station's call letters, you spilled yogurt on the control board, and you kept referring to Jerry with the identity crisis as Jeff.
And then, of course, I got to know him. And then, you know, bursting his bubble at any opportunity became my mission.
You know, Roz, I think I'm getting a knack for doing these promos. Did you hear that little ad lib I made about the yen for Chinese food?
Yeah. By the way, yen is Japanese, not Chinese.
He's a man of great principle.
She's psychic. We've decided to find it charming.
And he's a buffoon.
Our assistant casting director at Wings, Sheila Guthrie, came in one day and with a picture of David Hyde Pierce. And she said, I don't know if you've ever considered Frasier having a brother, but look at this actor. Doesn't he look like Kelsey did 10 years ago? And we saw the picture and we said that it was a startling resemblance. And so we said, that you're right, he looks very much like Kelsey. Is he good? She goes, he's wonderful.
Sheila Guthrie, who was one of the casting people, knew my work from another show that I had done called The Powers That Be, and she brought in tapes of me and on that show and said to the guys, if you ever have a brother for Frasier, this guy kind of looks like him. And the producers looked at the tapes.
And we loved what we saw, so we called David and or David's people and asked them if we could meet him. So a meeting was set up, and in the meantime, while we were waiting for the meeting to come about, we sort of sketched out what we thought this character would be of Frasier's brother.
They invited me in and met with me we had about a 20-minute meeting. Jeff Greenberg, the casting director, Peter Casey, David Angell, and David Lee, the 3 creators of the show, and we sat and talked, like I said, about 20 minutes. I went home, called my agent, and said that I thought it went well. And my agent said, well, it must have gone well because they offered you the job. And I was thrilled until I realized I hadn't seen a script. I didn't know what the part was. And so I thought, well, I hope this turns out well. I knew that Kelsey was going to be doing it. I heard they might be able to get John Mahoney, whose work I knew. And I knew that the guys had worked on Cheers, and so that was a pretty good pedigree for the writers. But when I finally got the script, I was totally depressed because I thought, well, they've written the same character as Frasier all over again. Why would you have 2 of the same guy? Which shows you just how smart I am.
Thanks for the chat, Niles. You're a good brother and a credit to the psychiatric profession. You're a good brother, too.
I knew the character immediately because it pretty well jumped off the page, but there was a very important detail that kind of clinched it for me, which was in the very first rehearsal of my very first scene, which was me and Kelsey in the coffee shop talking about problems I've been having with my gardener. There's a moment where we walk from the bar at the coffee shop and we go to sit down at the table. And just as I was about to sit down, very first rehearsal, Jimmy Burrows, who was directing, said to me, David, why don't you take out your handkerchief and dust off the chair before you sit down? That brilliant piece of advice was sort of linchpin in the character into just how meticulous, how obsessive, and how ridiculous he could become. And of course, I spent 5 minutes dusting off that chair before I sat down, but that really was an important part of the puzzle.
Look, you want us to forge some great father-son relationships, to make some connection. Well, that kind of thing takes a couple of years, not a couple of days, doesn't it? You're the shrink.
Couple of years, huh?
It'll go by before you know it.
Either that or it'll seem like eternity.
The 3 creators, David Angell, David Lee, and Peter Casey, called me and said, we'd love you to play Frasier's dad. And in the meantime, Kelsey was calling me at home in Chicago and saying, please play my dad, please play my dad.
I thought John Mahoney would be perfect for the father. We talked about it. The guys flew and visited him.
So when they came up with the pilot, they flew into Chicago, David, and Peter, We all went out to dinner at Shaw's Crab House. They sat at one end of the table eating crab. I sat at the other end of the table reading the script. And as soon as I finished it, I said, oh, yes, I have to be a part of this.
We got him a script when the time was right, and he told me that he would love nothing more than to play my dad.
John and I became immediate friends because we both had similar backgrounds. I didn't know it, but he's English. You know, he was born and raised in Manchester, where my character's from. So he was, you know, it was great having him around.
Quite an extensive background in home care and physical therapy, as you can see from my resume. You were a policeman, weren't you?
Yeah, how'd you know?
I must confess, I'm a bit psychic.
I was, from what I understand, a suggestion from the network, from Warren Littlefield at NBC.
They said, well, we found this British girl, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, what are you guys writing? What are you writing? The nanny and the professor? I said, I won't do it. I said, I will not do that. I saw that show once. It was dreadful. We're not going to be doing that show. I said, I won't do it. So I came down and met with her. I said, let me go in there along with her. And they were freaking out because they had written these scenes, and they thought, oh, these were great scenes. So I sat down with her, and we talked, and we read through it once, and I walked back out, and I said, okay.
Something about the character just jumped off the page, you know, when I read it. I knew this was my part. I just knew this kind of working class background, you know, and I think it is something that an American audience wasn't as familiar with. You know, they were more familiar with the sort of very upper class kind of English, or the Butler, or the bitch on Dynasty, you know, or one of those shows. So that's what they expected from English people. But to sort of be the warm-hearted working class person, it sort of opened up a new door, I think.
Of all the characters, Roz is one of the ones that was formed the last, because I think in the original writing of the script, the writers still weren't quite sure exactly who she was going to be.
We were willing to go any which way we could to find this Roz.
Roz was Asian, Roz was African-American, she was Hispanic, she was...
everything.
It was down to between me and a wonderful actress and a very, very, very funny and nice and smart person named Lisa Kudrow.
We all had known Perry. Perry had actually done a guest star on Cheers as well, and we all knew she was a competent actress that could show up and do the job, and that sealed her fate.
We decided, you know what, this woman, we need someone there who Frasier would be superior to in his arena, in the outside world, at a restaurant, anywhere else. But inside the arena of that radio station, she may not be as well educated as Frasier, but she is a veteran. She knows all the ropes. She has it on him, and she can make him, just humiliate him, you know, if she needs to. There
stand toe to toe.
Can absolutely stand toe to toe.
So are you going to say it, or are you going to make me wait till the end of the day?
Say what?
Happy birthday.
It is not your birthday. Oh, God. Oh, God, it is. Oh, Roz, I'm so sorry. God, let me take you out to lunch or something after work, okay?
You're so easy!
Oh, that's it. I'm out of here.
I remember the first table read very clearly because, you know, you write this whole script, you've heard it all in your head, and yet because of the way the casting was done, where the network was simply approving people for us, we had never heard Kelsey and David read together. We had never heard John read with all of them, so...
Never heard John read at all.
Yes.
Never heard David read at all.
The chemistry was from the very first table read. We all sat down, read the script for the first time, many of us never having met, and just, it just started from that moment. It clicked.
We all came from a very similar background, and we bonded very, very quickly, and it's obvious right from the start that we were more interested in putting out a good show and being proud of the work than we were in any sort of self-aggrandizement, and we all seemed to come from that same place.
It was just magic from the word go. I mean, the table read was so exciting. Everybody knew that this was a great thing.
I thought that we had put together the best team in television, and I thought that we had the best actors I'd ever met, and I thought there would have to be something seriously wrong if the show didn't receive great notices and an audience. I mean, I thought it was a really good show.
We've never met Maris because she's too scary.
Where's Maris?
Episode.
She would upset the children, frighten the pets, and cause despair amongst the adults.
I thought you liked my Maris. I do. I like her from a distance. You know, the way you like the sun. Maris is like the sun, except without the warmth.
They were going to show Maris. Again, one of the things I think the writers were concerned about in the first year was separating themselves from Cheers. For example, I know that they insisted there be no stools in the coffee shop because they didn't want it to look like the bar at Cheers. So Maris, even though it was such a funny idea that they have this horrifying woman that you only heard about, they didn't want her to become like Norm's wife on Cheers, Vera, who also never appeared the entire series. So they thought, well, sometime we'll just have her show up. But they had such a good time writing her as unseen, and the situations in which you didn't see her became more and more ridiculous.
Where did Mrs. Crane go anyway?
She's making her annual pilgrimage to the Holy Land.
Oh, she was going to Dallas to visit her sister.
Oh, that is her Holy Land. It's the site of the first Neiman Marcus.
And they realized, well, this is too much fun, so we're just going to keep at it. And so, for all of our sake, she never showed up.
Have you mentioned Eddie yet? Eddie? Ta-ta. Oh, no, Dad. No, not Eddie.
But he's my best friend. Give me my beer, will
But
you?
he's weird.
He was never particularly friendly, I have to be honest with you. He was never unfriendly, but he was strictly a one-woman dog, and that woman is Matilda Cagney, his trainer. He would do anything, he'd give up his life for Matilda, but he would never show any affection to the rest of the cast. We could pick him up, we could scratch his neck, we could rock him, we could kiss him, and it was just deadpan. Unless Matilda would go like this, and then maybe he'd give us a lick, or she'd do something, then he'd... but he would never do anything without Matilda's okay.
Oh, wait, there's something missing. Where's Eddie?
Oh, he's in the bathroom getting a drink. Eddie!
Over the years, we've replaced a lot of writers. Because once you get Frasier on your resume, you can pretty much write your own ticket. So a lot of our writers have gone on to be executive producers of their own shows, create their own shows.
The original group was there. Some of them left, some new people came, but there was always a sort of sense of someone keeping the, whatever it is, the flame alive, the standards and the what's important about the show, and that it needed to be funny, but never at the expense of the reality of the characters, and never at the expense of the relationships. And so much funny stuff gets thrown out of this show because it might be funny, but it wasn't right. And I think that's one of the reasons that it stayed so good.
I think one of the keys is we've of course had a lot of overturn in terms of the writing staff, but when they come to the show, there's a history of excellence that's expected of everybody, and I think a lot of the guys, arguably, and women who come to join us, step up to the best writing they're capable of doing, and then we get it down on the floor and we rehearse and we figure out and hash it through, and then we come up with a kind of hybrid that is the original sort of twisted vision of a writer that's been put on the page, and then we add our own specifically very weird kind of input about the characters, and we come up with this thing that remains fresh because, frankly, it is fresh because it's been created right then.
We've been blessed with great writers. I mean, I believe now that there are no writers on staff that were here at the beginning.
No.
So there's been a slow evolution of writers, and every time a new set of writers comes on or somebody new comes on staff, they show us what's new and interesting to them about the characters. And as long as you sort of got that fresh input and you're not trying to keep the show to remain rigid and you're willing to allow it to become someone else's vision, I think it's gonna stay fresh.
Hey, baby, I hear
Theme song it was very simple. I said, look, I want to sing the theme song. They said, if there's a theme song, I want to sing it. And they said, okay. And then they finally came up with one. I walked over to the recording studio right over here, and we spat it out. Just had some fun with it. At first, I thought it was a little weird, and then I decided to pretend I was a big blues singer. That sort of did the trick.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Quite stylish. And maybe I seem a bit confused, well maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. See you next year, we love ya!